Otherwise, I'm more, it's gone. Something
Hey.
else just popped up. Yes.
Good morning. I'd like to call to order the conference meeting of the Mobile County Commission in preparation for our February 8th regular meeting. Do we have any speakers? Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
There are no public comments at this time.
Okay. Mr. Hodge?
Number one, consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of December 28, 2020 and January 11, 2021. Number two, consider approving list of claims. Number three, consider approving amendment of Mobile County Commission conference and meeting schedule to reflect conference on Thursday, February 4, 2021, commenced at 9 a.m. Excuse me. Number four, consider rescinding the county commission action in March 9, 2020 minutes. Agenda item number 9, authorizing acceptance of the Project Safe Neighborhoods sub-grant award from Alabama Department of Economic Community Affairs on behalf of the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $28,105 for a period of October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020. Number
So,
five,
why are we rescinding? They couldn't carry out the grant objectives because of the pandemic? Is that what?
I'll get an answer to that for you. So, Nira's not here right now.
Okay.
Number five, consider adopting a resolution authorizing request of the Sheriff's Office to dispose of certain items from the fixed assets. Number six, consider approving contract with Kate Shepherd Parent Teachers Organization in the amount of $10,850 from District 2 funds to purchase equipment for Kate Shepherd Elementary School Outdoor Cafe Classroom. Number seven, consider amending contract approved in the October 26, 2020 minutes, agenda item number 22, with the Board of School Commissioners of Mobile County in the amount of $9,507.40 from District 3 funds to change use of funds from the purchase of technology equipment to provide collaboration computer lab for students at Dauphin Island Elementary School. Number eight, consider approving contract with J.E. Turner Elementary School Parent Teachers Organization in the amount of $17,475 from District 2 funds to purchase technology equipment and flexible seating. Number nine, consider authorizing acceptance of a grant award and subrecipient agreement from Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for public access master plan implementation in the amount of $3,500,000 with no match required, subject to final legal review. Number 10, consider authorizing execution of right of entry agreement with Town of Dauphin Island for the data collection related to the Graveline Bay Restoration Project pending final legal review. Number 11, consider contract with Nan Gray Davis Parent Teacher Organization in the amount of $18,880 from District 3 funds for a walking track at Nan Gray Davis Elementary School. Number 12, consider contract with O'Rourke Elementary Parent Teacher Organization in the amount of $20,000 from District 3 funds to purchase technology equipment from O'Rourke Elementary School. Number 13, approving contract with Boys and Girls Club of South Alabama in the amount of $40,000 from District 2 funds for Sims Branch restroom upgrades and replacement of gymnasium floor. Number 14, consider approving contract with Providence Hospital Foundation in the amount of $2,500 from District 1 funds for the Festival of Flowers event. Number 15, consider approving investment purchases of county funds by the treasurer for December 2020. Number 16, consider approving contract with Sims Elementary Parent Teachers Organization in the amount of $15,000 from District 2 funds to purchase playground equipment for Sims Elementary School. Number 17, consider adopting resolution authorizing request of county garage to dispose of certain items from fixed asset inventory lists. Number 18, consider authorizing advertising for bids for the isolation kennel building for the animal shelter. Number 19, consider awarding contract to Tyndall Construction 8 Mile License Commissioner's Office improvement for a total bid of $145,518. Excuse me. Number 20, consider contract with Pritchard Preparatory School, Inc., in the amount of $8,500 from District 1 funds to purchase educational programs. Number 21, consider approving professional services agreement with April Terra Livingston in the amount of $5,300 from District 1 funds for a carved sculpture display for the community remembrance project of Mobile County. Number 22, consider approving professional services agreement with Impact Public Affairs Consulting in the amount of $13,608 from District 1 funds for professional services and expenses. 23, consider approving an agreement with Mobile County EMS to provide first aid, CPR, and AED training for employees at James T. Strickland Youth Center at the rate of $30 per person per class for a term of 1 year. Number 24, consider approving change order number 1 with Ward Telematics and Fuel Control, increasing the total in the amount of $1,621.04 for upgrade vehicle fueling system at 5 Mobile sites. Number 25, consider taking the following action on bids. 26, consider approving the conditional real estate purchase agreement with JW Properties for the purchase of real property located at Michael Square Shopping Center, located on Azalea Road and south of Michael Boulevard, with an option period of 180 days for the sum of $5,000, and authorize the County Commission President to execute the agreement and other such documents as are necessary related to the potential sale of the said property. Number 27, consider approving custodial agreement with Regions Bank relating to custody and management of certain county-owned assets for a fee of $17,000 per year as recommended by the Investment Committee, subject to final legal review. And Commissioner, we have 2 add-ons. First add-on, consider approving application and subsequent grant of $383,397 to the Corporation for National Community Service for the Senior Companion Program of Mobile County. The county's match is $144,352, and the grant period is July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2023. Add-on number 2, consider reappointing James White to the Mobile County Water, Sewer, and Fire Protection Authority for a 6-year term effective March 1st, 2021 and expiring March 1st, 2027. And that's it.
All right, Mr. Kegley?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Item number 1, recommend the acquisition of property and acceptance of the right-of-way deed for one of our 2018 pay-as-you-go projects. Item 2, recommend authorizing to advertise and receive bids for the resurfacing of Fiber Road at the Norfolk Southern Railroad crossing. Commissioners, item 3, 4, and 5 are related to the 2018 Series B bonds. Item 3 being to adopt a resolution accepting the proposal of Regions Bank for the purchase of the Mobile County Commission bonds. Item 4, recommend adopting a resolution authorizing the issuance of the county pay-as-you-go bonds. Item 5, recommend adopting a resolution approving the call for the redemption and payment of the noted bonds. Items 6, 7, and 8 are related to the Series A of the 2020 Pay-As-You-Go program. Item 6, recommend adopting a resolution accepting the proposal of Regions Bank for the purchase of the 2020 Pay-As-You-Go bonds. Item 7, recommend adopting a resolution authorizing the issuance of the pay-as-you-go bonds. And item 8, recommend adopting a resolution approving the call for the redemption of the noted bonds. Item 9, recommend approving the right-of-way and/or easement agreements for Track 12, Track 25, and Track 33 on one of our 2018 pay-as-you-go projects. Item 10, recommend approving right-of-way and/or easement agreements for Track 1 and Track 13 on another one of our 2018 pay-as-you-go projects. Item 11, recommend approving right-of-way or easement agreement for Track 2 on one of our, it's actually a drainage outfall project, Commissioners, off of Roseland Drive. And this will be, the construction and CE&I will be funded through the 2021 CIP program. Item 12, recommend adopting a resolution and accepting an agreement with Alabama Power to provide power for the street light improvements for the signalization at Airport Boulevard and Eliza Jordan Road.
Hey, Brian.
Yes, sir.
I know we've discussed that traffic signal there.
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, I guess you or Ricky, could you go out and, we've had numerous accidents over the last several weeks at that intersection, and I know I've received calls.
I have to.
Could we maybe check that and see if there's something we could do meanwhile while we're waiting for that signal to be put up, maybe before you get to the traffic intersection, some flashing lights or something on a sign with a intersection sign there or something of that nature?
Okay.
Just check it out. I mean, I've had several calls, and I know Commissioner Hudson has as well,
Okay.
from several homeowners associations and individuals that live in that area about the accidents there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll certainly see if we can get out there and put some, intersection ahead signage
Yeah.
with maybe a flashing light.
Yeah, that'd be
associated
great.
with it. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll
How
get
long does
that.
it take something like that to get, how long does it take to get a signal up? I just don't know.
We're hoping to have this one up within the next, say 6 weeks or so, Commissioner?
Oh, the signal will be up then?
Correct.
Okay, I thought we had discussed that traffic signal and it was gonna be in the fall.
Absolutely. We originally planned on putting the signal in with the turn lane project.
Okay,
Okay, we have now pulled the signalization actually out of that project. We want to do it
okay,
ahead of schedule, so.
okay. If that's the
because of
case, then
problems-
if that's the case, if this traffic light's gonna be up within 6 weeks, then scratch what I just asked and let's just move forward with the traffic signal. I
Well, if
wasn't-
it's something that just can be placed out there, for a temporary period of time.
Well, I'm sure we can do that, Commissioner. We'll see
Yeah,
if
I
we
mean,
can put that signage up for you.
It wouldn't hurt, I don't think,
Yeah.
to have that
If
up
we're
now.
having that much trouble, we'll go put something up for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that the timeline had been moved up on that. I appreciate you doing that.
Item 13, recommend approving the gas line agreement with In-Store for one of our 2018 pay-as-you-go projects. That has been reviewed and approved by our legal department. Item 14, recommend approving agreement for the relocation of the gas line with South Alabama Utilities for the Johnson Road West project and no cost to the county. Item 15, recommend approving agreement for the relocation of the sewer line with South Alabama Utilities for that same project, no cost to the county. And then item 16, recommend approving agreement for the relocation of water line facilities with South Alabama Utilities on the roundabout there at House Ferry Road and Fire Tower Road, and that's in our 2018 pay-as-you-go program. And that is currently it, Commissioners.
On 13, In-Store, is that a gas provider up that way?
Yes, ma'am.
Never heard of it.
In-Store is a shortened name for, it's a Bay Gas Storage Company LLC. They just go by In-Store.
Commissioner, per your inquiry on agenda item number 4, Sheriff Clarkland released the obligation of the grant due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and obstacles.
Okay, so they just couldn't meet the grant objectives because of the pandemic. Okay, thank you. Any? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Commissioners, John Hoyle with Thompson Consulting Services is here to speak on service agreement.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is just take a minute to allow anyone who needs to leave now, if you're certainly free to do that. I mean, people who just came for our regular agenda. I'm not running anybody out, just.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, it's a little loud. My name is John Hoyle. I'm the president of Thompson Consulting Services. Joined today by Scott Hardy, Aliska Morgan, and Chad Brown with Thompson Engineering, who I think some of you may know. I wanted to first and foremost thank Eddie Kerr and Jay Ross for helping me to kind of coordinate this and put it together. The purpose of today's discussion is just to provide you with an update on the debris removal program that's resulted from Sally and Zeta, and discuss a contract capacity request from the commission itself. I put together a presentation of sorts. It's more a matter of talking points, and I'm certainly comfortable with questions as we go, so feel free to interject or I guess interrupt, but I don't view it as an interruption, so just interject with questions as you see fit. From an overview standpoint, I was just going to provide a brief introduction just of who Thompson Consulting Services is. It's something that I want you to know for future project work. Hopefully you won't need me, but also provide you just with an overview of Hurricane Sally and Zeta and what that meant for the region, not only Mobile County, but the region. Talk a little bit about the debris management process. That includes both DRC Emergency Services and then Thompson Consulting Services and what our roles are as they relate to the county. Briefly touch on the ACCA Joint Bid Program, which is how we arrived at our contract arrangement with Mobile County, and then discuss the capacity increase request. So I think all of you probably know Thompson Engineering, hometown engineering firm since 1953. In 2011, Thompson Engineering hired me to develop their disaster response and recovery administration business. So I deal with grant program funding all over the country. We're currently working as far west as California and as far east as Puerto Rico and a lot of places in between. So I actually coordinate with FEMA and my staff in all the regions around the country, and essentially our role is to make sure that your reimbursement is fully secured and that the funds that you are due for debris removal in this case are paid in full to Mobile County. We've done about $3.5 billion worth of this work around the country in the last 10 years, so we do a lot of it. I just also provided some examples of clients that we have here in Alabama. We also do a lot of work here in the state. Moving forward to the project profiles, I wanted to kind of set the stage for this discussion, and to do that you really have to start with Hurricane Sally and Hurricane Zeta. Sally, as you know, followed a similar track to Ivan, so it was a near miss to the east. The devastation in Baldwin County is markedly different from what we see here in Mobile County. We also represented Escambia County, Florida, and I can tell you that the damage there, by comparison, we certainly had our challenges here. Any storm is an interruption, but to a certain degree, I think we were blessed in Mobile County that this thing just moved to the east. That was pretty quickly followed with Hurricane Zeta, which was a near miss to the west. Made landfall in Louisiana, and we represent Jackson County, Mississippi, and I can tell you that the damage there is significantly worse than what we saw here in Mobile County, so a near miss to the west. As that storm kind of made its curve, Clark and Washington's County, just to the north, if you look at it per capita or per geographic size of the counties, probably sustained worse damage. So while we've had a challenging hurricane season here in Mobile County, I think to a large degree, we missed to the east, west, and north to a large degree. And I think that's going to play into the discussion that we have here just in a few more slides. I'm currently on page 6, and page 6 just talks briefly about the roles and responsibilities of the different parties that are involved in the debris removal program. Mobile County, unfortunately, has the fundamental and primary responsibility of administering the program and managing that program. So the funding flows from the federal government at FEMA to AEMA, ultimately to the county, and the county is responsible for managing and directing the operation for the debris removal. DRC Emergency Services, and I think Mr. Charles Kraft is here today if there's any questions for them. They have the yellow iron. They're the folks that show up with the equipment to remove the debris. You had access to DRC through the ACCA Joint Bid Program. And then finally, there's Thompson Consulting Services. And our role in this program, as I said, is to, number one, and fundamentally, is to make sure that you receive your full reimbursement. In order to do that, we send out monitors to actually collect data and capture that information so that we meet the requirements of the federal government. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. DRC Emergency Services, just some quick stats there. There's 230,000 cubic yards of debris removed from Mobile County for the 2 storms, 35,000 yards of sand primarily from Dauphin Island, and then a significant number of hazardous hanging limbs and dangerous leaning trees were removed. So all told, we're looking at about $10.5 million through the 31st of January for debris removal. I'm going to provide some context for those numbers because right now on a sheet of paper they look like, well, those look like big numbers, but they don't mean a whole lot if they're not in the context of maybe some neighboring communities to kind of understand the issue at hand. Moving forward to slide 8, kind of pivoting to the debris monitoring. So fundamentally the way the process works is DRC brings the equipment to Mobile County. We provide inspectors to go and first certify the equipment and make sure that it has a haul capacity, and we affix barcodes to that equipment. That allows us to hire local monitors, so local employees from Mobile County, provide them with training, and then provide them with essentially handheld computer devices and hip belt printers so that they can go out and scan the equipment as work is being completed. It captures GPS coordinates, photographs, and things of that nature. All of that information that's collected and gathered, tens of thousands of records, is assimilated into a database that Eddie's group is able to essentially access and manage the program. As far as the effort goes, we hired 158 locally unemployed folks from Mobile County to work on this. Estimated wages paid out is about $800,000 in wages. So one of the benefits and one of the success stories I think that we often kind of just skip over as we talk through the challenges is just the local economic impact that it's had on the community. So again, we were able to employ 158 folks, $800,000 plus in wages paid over a short period of time, all to folks who were either because of the pandemic, because of the storm, for whatever reason, just needed work. So I always like to highlight that as a benefit. Slides 9 and 10 are just some pictures of what I talked about, what the handheld device looks like, what some of the barcodes look like, and then ultimately how that information is represented in the database. So slide 9 is kind of a picture of, what our role is at the street, what the role looks like at the dump site, and then ultimately what that information then looks like in the database to secure FEMA funding. And slide 10 is just a snapshot of the daily report that's provided to Mobile County each day so that they can understand the number of monitors that are out in the field, the number of individual assets that are out working, how much work is being performed in the context of the contract, and then obviously just some graphics to represent trends so that the county is able to see kind of the progress of the debris removal program. So that concludes kind of the overview of kind of what happened, how we arrived at being involved here, what our roles and responsibilities are. And the next thing I wanted to just talk about is a contract matter in the ACCA agreement and a request that I have for the commission. Before we dive into that, are there questions about roles or responsibilities or anything that I can answer to just clear up from a process standpoint? All right.
You mentioned that those numbers didn't mean a lot in context. Are you going to get into the deeper dive on those
Yes, ma'am.
now? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And actually, so I wanted to set that up so that you could kind of get a feel for, how Mobile County had gotten here. And one of the things that Mr. Kerr suggested as I brought this request forward was, hey, we need some numerical information. And the challenge with numerical information is it in and of itself doesn't mean a whole lot unless it's in the context of surrounding communities so that we can understand, what the challenges were. So that's exactly where I'm going, Ms. Lovegood. So the ACCA Joint Bid Program, the ACCA, every 3 years, Thompson's been part of the contract cycle. They procure these contracts on a pre-event basis. In the federal world, they're called IDIQ, or indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. A lot of times at the local level, we just say unknown scope and unknown quantity of work. So in 2018, the ACCA procured services on a general basis and said, if there is a disaster event, whether that's a tornado, an ice storm, or a hurricane, in these 6 counties, we'd like you to propose hourly rates for a very general scope. Thompson submitted a proposal providing those hourly rates and was competitively awarded or selected as the best value contractor under the ACCA agreement. After the award, Thompson was offered a contract, and in that contract was Article 10. And Article 10 essentially says this is a time and materials contract, and because it's a time and materials contract, we're going to establish an initial cap of 15% of debris removal cost as a metric to measure your cost against. It also explicitly says that Thompson, as the consultant, can negotiate with the county to adjust that percentage depending on the nature, type, and requirements of the project. Adjustments in accordance with Article 10 are not, they have been done before. Lee County, Alabama had a tornado in the early part of 2020. They had a different consultant working for them, and the county commission there adjusted the capacity to 25%, but it didn't ultimately land at 25%. Essentially what that cap is the top side of what the total project billings can be charged to the project, but the actual work is paid on a T&M basis on the hourly rates that were originally proposed. So no changes to the hourly rates, no request for compensation above or beyond what's in the contract itself.
Can you give me an example of the hourly rate?
Yes, the debris monitor, I believe the hourly rate is between 32 and 35. So that's the bill rate. Debris monitors make up about 80 to 85% of the total hours that are charged. Those employees are the 158 that I talked about. So essentially, we hire 80 to 85% of the project staff from the local community. We provide them with training, provide them with the equipment so that they can go out and perform the work at pretty low bill rates. So we're not talking about traditional inspection services rates.
Are they hired as a employee or as a subcontractor through Thompson?
They're hired on as temporary employees, but they do receive a W-2 and are offered health insurance and the things that are required. So there are companies that hire them as independent contractors. The Department of Labor frowns upon that, and it's it puts the employee in an unfair position. So we pay workman's comp and provide the full gamut of liabilities associated with employment. Here on slide 12, again, just kind of what the debris monitor is responsible for. Regardless of how productive the debris removal contractor is, and by productive, I give a good example would be in Baldwin County, a truck can spend all day on one street, and they can do 7 or 8 loads just clearing one street. So I have one monitor that would watch that one truck on one street constantly work all day. In Mobile County, they may have to drive to 8 different streets, put out their outriggers, collect individual piles to get a full truck to make one trip. The federal requirement for the monitoring is still the same, regardless of how productive the debris hauler is. We still have to document the GPS coordinates. We still have to essentially paint the picture of where the debris came from. And that's really going to be the crux of the next part of this discussion. The factors that I wanted to kind of bring to light as we kind of did some data-driven analysis at the request of Mr. Kerr are the quantity of material, so how much material was moved, the type of material. Was it vegetative material or was it construction and demolition material? The number of DMS sites, the turnover of equipment, the load capacity of that equipment, and then haul distance and density of debris. I've actually taken each of those factors on slide 13 and made an attempt to kind of capture average metrics from surrounding communities. So Mobile County is at the top. And I want to make sure that I'm clear that these factors and metrics they're measuring the efficiency of the contractor, and the efficiency of the contractor to a large degree is a result of the storm. When you have a situation like you have in Mobile County where it's just widespread, countywide, there's debris as far north as the county line, but it's not in it wasn't in dense locations, it was spread out. So when we talk about volume, it's just, are there any efficiencies or economies of scale to be achieved? So Mobile County had 235,000 yards, and you can kind of make your way down the column there to see, by comparison, how large the neighboring programs were. And really what you see there is that Mobile County was approximately half the size, if we wanted to say on average. So the economies of scale and the efficiencies of scales that could have been achieved by the contractor weren't there. They had to kind of work harder to earn their money, if that makes sense. They're moving around a lot more to pick up the debris. The next factor that we evaluated was the C&D, percent C&D material. Vegetative material is less expensive to remove per the contract, the ACCA contract. And more importantly, it doesn't have tipping fees associated with it. So when you start talking about measuring the monitoring cost in comparison to the total program or just the debris removal cost, one of the major factors is the expense of the debris removal contractor. C&D material has tipping fees. It's a more expensive material to haul. And what you see is that there was a comparatively low percentage of C&D material here in Mobile County. Again, this is a good thing for the county. That means there was less damage to homes, there was less damage to fences. So these are not bad things necessarily, but rather just metrics to measure. The next factor is the number of DMS sites, debris management sites. In a case like Mobile County, as geographically broad as it is and spread out as the debris was, the contractor elected to open numerous sites. Thompson has to put 2 employees at each of those sites, regardless of how busy the site is. So you just look at the number of sites that were opened in order to accomplish the geography and the haul distances that were required in Mobile County, and you see that there were more sites. Even though there was less total debris, it required more sites for the contractor. The next measure is, or metric is the amount of equipment that was certified in. Each piece of equipment that arrives at Mobile County has to be certified by Thompson. And by certified, we have to capture a bunch of information and affix that barcode. What this number really shows is the amount of effort that was expended by Thompson to certify the equipment, number one. But number two, it's indicative of turnover. And turnover is generally a result of tough work. So if you have subcontractors that can go over to Baldwin County and make easy money, or they can go over to Lake Charles and make easy money because the debris is very dense, a company like DRC has to work very hard to do the work here in Mobile County because it's a market, and the folks that drive these trucks want to go where the work is easy and the money is plentiful. I think it's a feather in their cap that it required more turnover, but they were able to still get the work done. And it's tough to be the smallest job in the storm because the volume of work isn't there. So what that means for me as Thompson is I have to certify more equipment and deal with heavier turnover, which costs or requires additional effort. I think another important factor to look at here is the average capacity. So on average for each piece of equipment here in Mobile County, its certified capacity was 50 cubic yards. So that means each trip from the curbside to the dump site had an average box size of 50 cubic yards, where you see by comparison larger trucks in surrounding communities. And all that tells us is that they're hauling less debris per trip, which by comparison means that the monitoring firm, as I kind of indicated before, we're there monitoring what's collected from the side of the road, regardless of the production of the debris contractor. And the last two, a little harder to really get your head around, is average haul distance. So that's the distance on average from point of collection to dump site. You see there were more dump sites in Mobile County, so the haul distance was reduced to 7.57 miles on average, but still near the bottom. And then finally, just the peak max load, and that's the number of trips. And on the peak day of production, the number of trips that the average truck was able to make to the dump site and back here in Mobile County was 7.5. Are there questions on those this table is intended to provide some numerical reference to frame. I think your question was good. You know, what do these numbers mean? And really, for them to mean much, they have to be compared to something. And so what we tried to do is not just look at the economies of scale, because a lot of times we would say, hey, this job was half the size, and it's really hard to gain any efficiencies of scale when it's a smaller job. But there were a lot of factors outside just the size of the job. Many of the factors are related to the fact that this was a small job, but they're factors that, by their very nature, increase the level of monitoring relative to the cost of the debris removal. So I think that probably the better way to say that is that the monitoring requirement is fixed and the debris removal cost is reduced because it's simply just not a large project.
So we had less debris that was more widely scattered, which required a lot more time on trying to get a load to take it to be dumped.
That's correct.
And more monitoring, I guess.
And my monitor is out there on an hourly basis. They're observing the work, and if a truck has to move, put out its outriggers, get their safety folks set up, and they collect 1 cubic or 3 cubic yards or 5 cubic yards into their truck, and then they pick all that up and they move to the next load that might be 3 miles down the road. They have to do the same setup. Our monitor still has to capture the GPS coordinates. They have to stay with that truck and document the eligibility of the debris, but it's taking them 3-4 times longer to get a load. Mm-hmm. And we're out there on an hourly basis. It's kind of just the nature of the scope when you have a smaller event like this.
And how is there any way to quantify how that affected the overall hourly rate?
So the
In
hourly
comparison with others you've got listed here?
So the hourly rates, they don't change, but the relative cost. So the assembled cost to monitor the debris relative to the debris removal cost is what changes. And really what you see from that is when you have higher debris removal quantities that are removed more efficiently, the debris removal cost goes up and the monitoring cost by comparison is just relatively lower. So in Escambia County, Florida, where we remove 4 million cubic yards of debris in comparison to 239, that relative cost may be 7 or 8% or even lower. What I can tell you from FEMA's perspective is that at 30%, they start looking to say, okay, because in their opinion, even small programs can be managed at 30%. Bigger programs might be inside of 10%. At 30%, they start looking, and we're currently, the percentage we're talking about is 15%.
Okay.
So, just for
I think
context.
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Okay.
The final kind of slide here before the closing, slide 14, is just to provide the commission with an understanding of kind of what this looks like. On the life cycle of a project, you see costs go up and then costs come back down, and it's really the metric that's used to measure the monitoring cost against the total program or the hauling cost. It changes every day because both parties are incurring costs, and efficiencies for both parties change throughout the life cycle of the project. So I can't tell you like it's going to be this percentage at this day at some point in the future. What we do know is since we've started having this discussion with Mr. Kerr's office is that we've seen the trend moving down. So the monitoring cost, I originally had suggested or requested an increase of 25% capacity because that's what had been done in the past. It's something that's inside the FEMA standard, and I felt like it would provide sufficient cushion as we move towards the closeout. And we've kind of seen since December, we've just seen the relative cost decline. The discussion that we have right now, as of January 31st, the max exposure of this request to the county would be $60,000, and I think the bottom side of that fence is $15,000. So I think it's going to be somewhere between $15,000 and $60,000 as the request, depending on what that percentage lands at between 15 and 20. This week, I apologize to the folks at the county that have been helping me. I made a revision to the request and said, well, the 25 is just probably not going to be necessary. We're so near the finish of the job now. We don't really see a scenario where it's going to escalate above 20%. So I made that revision to this particular request earlier this week. So with that, I'm at the closing and request slide, and the request that I'm making is that capacity, in accordance with the contract, the contract itself reads that written authorization needs to be provided to increase that capacity from the 15%. I think Mr. Ross and the legal folks from Thompson have looked at, what mechanism that is, but I think as we continue to discuss this, Mr. Kerr indicated that the commission would like to kind of understand maybe the basis for the request and some data metrics that exist that justify the request. So that was the purpose of my discussion today, and I'm happy to answer questions.
So as you true up, that's the only way I know how to do it, true up this balance, it could be 19, but you're asking for up to 20.
Up to 20, and it will only be based on the hourly rates that were bid in the contract.
So it could fall anywhere between the 15 and 20?
Correct.
But 20 is
Yep.
the ceiling?
That's correct.
I have a question. Back to slide 11. Am I to understand in reading this that that after the award, after ACCA made the contract award to Thompson, then Article 10 was introduced after the fact, that you were not aware at the time when the contract was approved that you had a 15% monitoring cost?
That's correct. So the procurement documents came out, and it included a bid sheet. We've submitted the bid sheet, and we were awarded based on those bids. The request before you today is not to change our bid rates. Those rates are what they are in the contract. We're honoring those rates. What was offered to us in the contract is it's simply a contract term that says this is a T&M contract, and as the consultant, you will be charging the time and materials that it takes for you to deliver this work. And we want to establish a basis to measure against. We only accepted that term because it also provided, it explicitly says that the consultant can negotiate this with the county.
But you were aware that it was at the 15%, that was the
After
starting
award,
point, as you say?
After award.
After-
But it had nothing to do with the proposal or the bid. Because
Okay.
it's a cost control mechanism. And frankly, it served its purpose. The purpose of that is to not have a time and materials contract where I or a competitor just show up and we just start charging hours and you never have any of it. You never know how much it's going to be. That's the concern with runaway contracts on a time and materials basis. So this particular clause has been discussed between Thompson and Mobile County since the first week of the project. So we've had to continue to provide daily reports of this is how many people we have in the field, this is what the contractor's production is. So what it does is it ensures that we're having this discussion that we're having right now.
Okay. One other question, and I guess I'll direct this at our attorney, Mr. Ross. Since this contract with Thompson, my understanding is this is part of the ACCA joint bid program. So who does Thompson have a contract with at this point? Is it ACCA?
The contract amendment contemplates a mutual or change agreement with each county commission. So,
But we don't have an initial contract. ACCA has the joint bid contract.
they do and it was bid through this Region 1, which included several counties, including Mobile. The general terms of the contract were not with us per se, but we were subject to it. This provision 10 or section 10 of the contract, this reference allows compensation under the contract not to exceed 15% unless there's some mutual agreement or prior agreement of a county commission and contractor.
Well, one more question
Yes,
then.
ma'am.
Does the legality of this, since this was a bid contract, if we increase that percentage rate, does that not impact bid law? I mean, is that, I'm assuming that that's allowable to just increase the percentage if the contract has been competitively bid?
I think that, even generally speaking, contracts that are competitively bid can make adjustments without rebidding for unknown and unanticipated events. The rule of thumb, if through the many attorney general opinions, not to exceed a 10% increase for something that was not foreseen or predictable at the time that the contract was entered into. You see those more frequently when the scope of a contract is changed because we want to make a building larger, we want to go add additional width of road. Here you've got, it was not to exceed 15%. The discussion here adds as much as 5% more. It was not contemplated nor anticipated. The scope of the work is not changing. We didn't change our mind as what we wanted to do. I hadn't really thought about that, Commissioner Hudson. It's a good question. I would think just sitting here right now, it's a fairly defensible argument. I will say, to add to...
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have another question on that?
Not a follow-up to that.
Let me, so I thought the time and materials was the only bid component.
It is.
That's the only aspect of this that was subject to the bid, and that's not changing. And that what happened once we went from a bid, when we got down to a contract document, then the 15% was introduced. But But when you were bidding, was there any discussion about this is, whatever you bid, remember, this is gonna be subject to a 15% cap?
The only thing that was bid were the hourly rates themselves, and they remain unchanged. The capacity is a contract provision that's intended to provide discussion and cost control measures, so that they said, okay, we need a percentage. One could have a long discussion about whether that percentage makes any sense at all, because we're the inspector. Our cost shouldn't be tied to what we're approving. I mean, it's maybe not a great provision to begin with, but it exists and it was offered only after the award and only for purposes of cost control. It does not change our bid in any way, shape, or form, because the rates that were proposed and bid remain unchanged.
Are there any other jurisdictions that this capacity request is being made to at this time? Or is it or is it just Mobile County because of what you've shown us?
So Lee County, Alabama successfully changed it
I saw that.
and has been through the reimbursement process. I'm currently having discussions with Clark and Washington County. They're in a very similar situation, spread out debris. The difference there is that it's much early. They didn't even start debris removal until January. So they had virtually no Sally impacts and much more significant Zeta impacts, but those discussions are now underway with those communities. The reality of it is, I think in Mobile County, it's going to be pretty close to the 15, but we don't know. I mean, and we won't know until the project is done. Whether it's going to be 16 or 17 or 18, we don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Outside of jurisdictions that use the ACCA joint bid program, let's say that you had I guess Jackson County, since it's in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have does Mississippi have some state agency that does these bids that you get, or do you bid directly with Jackson County?
So the comparison contracts that we provide are all directly between Thompson and either the county or the city.
Okay.
They do not have provisions to measure our cost against the debris contractor's cost. In the case of all three, we proactively submit budgets because we want to make sure that I don't want to have these discussions with somebody after they have a surprise. So outside the requirements of our contract, we submit budgets because it's a time and materials contract, to every client we work for. So I'm not having the same discussion because there's no fixed cap per se.
I guess let me simplify my question. Do you have this provision in, say, a contract with a municipality or a county that doesn't have a bid program with a state agency like the ACCA? If you were just bidding with Jackson County, period, do you have this provision in that contract where you could do the same thing there, or is this just something that you have set up with ACCA?
We don't have that provision in any other contract across the 250 that we have nationally.
Okay.
And
So I guess the basic answer is what you get is what you get, and this has a provision to allow an increase. Does that pretty much answer my question?
It does.
Okay. I have no
Any,
No more, thank you.
All right. I'll
You
go
have-
back under the cloak of the mask.
okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Anything else? Nice to see you, Mr. Mack. I guess you didn't get the message. We started at 9.
Yeah, I did, but I had a school board meeting to cover as well.
Oh, okay.
He's
Well, nice-
stretched thin.
That's the concept of being in two places at one time.
Nice to see you. If you figure that out, let us know. We could use that information too. Okay. If nothing else, we stand adjourned.